So yes, to quickly run through our agenda, today we're going to highlight the CRTPO staff that has been most involved with this application process. We will briefly cover why the CRTPO is applying for this grant and explain what the RAISE grant program is all about. Then we will tell you what making our roads safer is about and explain why we've invited you to be here today. And then lastly, we'll close with any questions that you might have. So yes, as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and that recording will be posted to the CRTPO's website. Please keep your microphones muted unless one of the speakers calls on you and asks you to unmute. Feel free to submit any questions you have in the chat, and staff will create an FAQ document after this webinar if necessary. So hi, I am Brian Elgort, and I'm the project implementation coordinator for the CRTPO, and I have been the project manager on this application process. With me tonight are Will Snyder, who is the CRTPO's associate planner, as well as Judy Dellard, our participation and consultation planner, and Theo Thompson, our office manager. Now, a little bit about the CRTPO. So CRTPO stands for Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization, and we are the federally designated Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, for the Charlotte urban area. And our planning boundary includes Iredell County, Mecklenburg County, and most of Union County in North Carolina. MPOs are responsible for carrying out a continuing, cooperative, and comprehensive transportation planning process. And our role in the region, we sort of play a role between the federal government, state government, and local governments, as well as other regional agencies. And so we coordinate that transportation planning process with 21 municipalities across our 3 counties. We also work closely with the Federal Highway Administration, the North Carolina Department of Transportation, and other key agencies like the Metropolitan Transit Commission and public transit agencies. All of this is to say that the CRTPO is uniquely positioned to carry out cross-jurisdictional planning efforts in the Charlotte region. And now I'm going to turn it over to Will to tell you more about RAISE.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Hi, everyone. My name is Will Snyder. As Brian introduced, I'm the CRTPO's associate planner, working closely with Brian on developing our application for RAISE this year. And so just a little bit about RAISE. It's an acronym that we're going to be using a lot throughout this presentation, and it's pretty key to the kind of funding that we'll be going after. So RAISE stands for Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. It is a very significant investment in our transportation network nationally, but then, of course, certainly trying to capture those dollars in the planning area that Brian just covered. So kind of an interchangeable way to understand it is it's a product of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA. That's more commonly known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or bill. So when you kind of hear those two terms, those are pretty interchangeable in nature. But like I said, it's a very large investment. So it's about $274 billion, specifically focused on transportation programs in the nation. And specifically for the RAISE application, it targets 3 federally designated geographies. And so RAISE lays these out as rural areas, areas of persistent poverty, and historically disadvantaged communities. And so those definitions are very key for the application that the CRTPO will be compiling, because these are specific geographies in our planning area that we will be targeting with safety funding dollars. And so let's take a look at this next slide, and you'll see a map of our service area, or our planning area, again, including those 3 county areas of Iredell, Mecklenburg, and portions of Union County. So first and foremost, in in Iredell County, you'll see an overlay of some of those key geographies. And so you can see the yellow and dotted kind of black dots and the green areas. Where those geographies overlay are really the very key areas that we'll be targeting. So you can see portions of Statesville and Troutman and Mooresville a little bit there. We have some overlay of a couple different types of those geographies. In Mecklenburg County, that takes place really in the Charlotte area, but not exclusively Charlotte. There's certainly some of that color change down into the Pineville area. We also see that the eastern portions of the northern suburbs of Charlotte are certainly also considered rural. Focusing then down to Union County, we again see that overlay taking place in Monroe, Wingate, Marshville. So really, again, targeting these geographies, especially portions where we see multiple overlays of those in these historically disadvantaged and disinvested communities. There's several reasons why we're choosing to pursue a RAISE application. The first and foremost is the CRTPO has a strategic plan that we've adopted, and that comes with several goals and responsibilities that we've placed upon ourselves to ensure that we have continuous funding, alternative funding resources, and general planning for the changing transportation needs of our planning area. So out of our strategic plan, this most aligns with goals 1 and 6. Goal 1 is to lead on regional mobility issues, and we'll talk a little bit about how up to this point we have not had a safety or traffic safety or pedestrian safety plan that covers our entire planning area. So while individual jurisdictions may have opted to adopt that kind of plan, cities such as Charlotte have a Vision Zero plan. This will cover our entire planning area within those key targeted geographies. Goal 6 then expands regional transportation funding. So while we have a fixed budget that we do work on and various fixed federal dollars that we receive on various timelines, this is a grant that we are not required to pursue, but that we are opting to pursue. It's, again, a very critical amount of dollars that we would otherwise miss out on if we didn't apply. The next one is a required product that us as a metropolitan planning organization has to complete, which is our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or MTP. So this is a federal document that we compile to identify corridors and areas of investment over a long period of time. And there's several goals that also lays out as part of the prioritization of projects within that plan. One of those is to identify and pursue alternative funding. So again, this is one of those alternative funding streams that we don't otherwise have on a fixed annual basis. There's also several projects identified within the MTP that are essentially waiting in line, for lack of better terms. They have to follow through a process of seeking funding from planning all the way to construction. And so with something like RAISE, we can really advance the planning stage specifically on potentially some of those projects that would otherwise go through a very lengthy timeline to be completed. So certainly knocking some very critical projects out there. The other element is within our Unified Planning Work Program. So this is another federal requirement that we have as an MPO, but it's essentially our budget. So every year we set forth a budget with activities that we will be completing as an MPO, and we are always, changing and modifying those activities outside of the fixed ones that we're required to do. And one of those is we will be committing staff, resources, time, dollars to safety planning in FY25. And this is regardless of if we are awarded this RAISE application. And so that's pretty critical because the RAISE application will certainly make the safety study much more robust than it is, kind of based on just a smaller budget for this project. Now hand it back over to Brian to talk about our grant program, SAFER.
Thanks, Will. And so as you all have heard tonight, there are a lot of acronyms in this work. And so we wanted to come up with a good acronym for this application, and that application is SAFER. So our application is titled Making Our Roads Safer, a Cross-Jurisdictional Study. And it's being conducted throughout the CRTPO planning area. The S stands for safety improvements. This study will prioritize protecting non-motorized travelers from safety risks as they move through our region. And this will be accomplished by first mapping safety data to produce a high injury network that highlights corridors and intersections with the most fatal and severe crashes, as well as other factors like crashes involving pedestrians or cyclists. And then we will be using that high injury network in combination with our public engagement to identify the most highly prioritized areas to do some pedestrian and bicyclist road safety audits based on FHWA guidelines. The A stands for accessible design. As we review safety and mobility issues, it will be critical that we evaluate existing and potential barriers for all potential users of the transportation network. So any recommendations made by this study will integrate guidance from universal design principles. The F stands for flexible trips. One of the primary goals of this study will be increasing affordable transportation choices and mobility. We need to understand our transportation network in terms of getting people to their key daily destinations like work, school, and grocery stores in modes that aren't just personal vehicles. The E stands for equitable planning. This webinar is just the first step to the CRTPO's inclusive public engagement campaign. We plan to use a variety of techniques to make sure all of our residents can make their voices heard and to ensure that the community is involved in the study's development from the very beginning all the way through the end, and then afterwards through continuing planning efforts. And then finally, the R in SAFER stands for reconnecting communities. We want to use GIS mapping to document existing infrastructure, especially sidewalks, bike lanes, and the like, as well as other relevant community facilities, so transit stops, and then ground that data with community feedback to prioritize the gaps in the network. Because it's one thing to know where there are gaps, it's another to know which gaps the community most needs addressed immediately. And so we want to use our engagement to get into the communities and hear about where these missing connections are most needed. And now I'll turn it back over to Will to cover our ask for today's presentation.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's see, our animation's freezing up there for a second. So we'll jump to community collaboration. So part of this whole grant strategy is that we would certainly like to not just be working in silos on this project. It's really critical that we're reaching out to our communities that will be affected by this study to really be able to ensure that the public engagement process as part of the grant award is especially robust as possible. We're certainly allocating a pretty large budget to public engagement, and we want to really be sure that we make as much of a reach as possible to make sure the study's outcomes are as successful as possible. So we are undertaking that process as CRTPO in 4 steps. First and foremost is the information portion. So today's webinar, as well as the resources we'll be posting on our website, are really step 1. So we are notifying the broader community that we are pursuing this application and are certainly keeping folks that are interested, you all in this call, folks who have RSVP'd but couldn't make it this evening as well, of the status of our application. And, you know, I'm saying when we're awarded, we're certainly really optimistic about this year's cycle of raise. The second step then is the ask. So I'm going to get into that in the next couple of slides, but our request will really be of, as Brian mentioned earlier, a letter of support from your organization or your public agency that affirms that this study will be really critical to the work that your communities are doing, that your organizations are doing. It will affect those that you're certainly working with day to day. We want this to be an all-in buy-in in terms of how critical this study will be to our planning area. And we'll do so through a public engagement toolkit that I'll speak about here in a second. That commitment will, again, come from those letters of support that we will supplement the attachment portion of the application with. And then we will, again, keep you all posted of how the application is going. So we'll be submitting the application the end of February, and we will keep you all informed of as we receive feedback from USDOT and receive status updates. We'll certainly pass that along to you all, again, with an eventual award date that we'll keep you posted on as well. But I want to focus first on the number 2 element there, which is the ask. So that in the responsibility that we are asking all of you who are attending will come in a couple of different steps. So the first step is really an evaluation of your resources. And so these are just some feeler questions that you can begin to think about as you're positioning your organization to potentially commit to providing some public engagement assistance with this grant. That may consist of assessing your time and staffing availability. What kind of facility are you in? Are you in a facility that can accommodate a public meeting if we were to request that you're hosting a focus group with some of our staff attending and leading that effort? Are there certain seasons throughout the year? If you're on a fiscal calendar, are there elements of that that are especially busy with budgeting? And then is there at least one individual who can really serve from your organization to be our contact person? We want to make sure that we are providing a direct stream of information, especially, again, should your organization be passing out information or hosting a public event, we want to make sure that we have really clear and concise communication channels to make that happen. So once you've done that evaluation, the next step will be choosing the preferred engagement methods that your organization is interested in. This is a page of our public engagement toolkit that you're looking at here. And there's all sorts of techniques, right? And it doesn't even have to be exclusive to this list. And we are purposely keeping these definitions broad because there are certainly ways that we find all different organizations and individuals can step up to participate. But these are some really common ones, right? So participating in email blasts. For example, we may provide you with the materials and you're including that in your regular newsletter blast. You're making a dedicated email to your stakeholders about the study. Maybe you're helping us pull together the right folks for a virtual town hall or webinar. These are all really key techniques that we find will both inform and gather input in a way that's effective and, again, comprehensive, reaching as many people as possible. Then with that, you'll indicate your interest and your commitment to participating through a letter of support. This will be written officially from your organization, and it will just affirm, your organization is interested in participating. You will be participating by XYZ, which is from the toolkit that I just showed on the last page. So we're interested in assisting with passing out flyers and hosting an in-person event in support of the study. This is not a legally binding commitment. I want to be clear on that. So if your resources and general commitment change between now and when the award takes place, we don't want to hold you to what you're saying today. I think what's really important is certainly just sharing what you think you can provide, and then we will firm up those details with you once we have more of a public engagement strategy in place for the study. We are seeking those letters to be submitted by Friday, February 23rd, end of day. And again, this toolkit, all of these materials are posted on our website on the left side of the screen there at crtpo.org/raise. So the public engagement toolkit at the top of that page will have all of the instructions for completing the process that I just explained. Okay. We are peppering you all with information, so I'm going to take a breather. We have some space now to take any questions. Certainly raise your hand in the call reaction box if you'd like to, if you have any kinds of questions. You can also unmute. I'm not seeing any chat questions either, so.
No, I didn't see any. No questions are in chat. So yeah, if anyone has a question, please raise your hand, or like Will said, just come off mute. You're happy to take any questions.
Hey, this is Aaron and Cornelius. Appreciate the information here. This is great. Did CRTPO apply for a grant last year, and was it not awarded? Is that what I recall correctly?
Correct. So the CRTPO did pursue a raise grant for a similar study last year, and we are refining our application based off feedback.
Gotcha.
We were one of the finalists last year. Out of over 1,100 applications, I think we were one of the final 300 that sort of got elevated to final consideration. So we
Okay.
have a lot of confidence moving forward this year that we've got the right sort of last pieces together, including things like this webinar to really drive home that we are deserving of this grant money.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. That's kind of what I remembered. And I think we'd certainly be in support of that. And it's something we've kind of looked at on, at least for the town of Cornelia, is looking to do for a long time, because we know we have safety issues, and it'd be good to look at that, not just in our town, but holistically throughout the whole jurisdiction. So I think this is great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. And I see that there's a comment in chat from Jason Wager of Central Line Regional Council. And he asks, are you seeking any cost share commitments? Alternatively, will you be calculating cost share based on in-kind staff contributions by partners? And that's a great question. So by targeting our application in those three geographies that the RAISE program has identified, we are not required to provide any match. We will actually be able to request 100% federal funding. So in fact, we will not have any cost share commitments needed.
While we're waiting for any other questions, I'll go ahead and advance to this slide here. So like I said before, if there are any additional questions after this call, if certainly you want to review a lot of the materials that we are publishing and putting on our website, this is that link, nice and bold for you, crtpo.org/raise. The recording of today's presentation, the presentation deck, any follow-up materials, Q&A materials, anything like that, we will be publishing on that page of our website. So certainly want to keep everyone in the loop of that material as well. If you have any questions, Brian is the main contact on the project, so certainly direct those to him, but flashing up our contact information for myself and Judy as well, should you need that. But again, certainly keeping it open for questions.
So this is not, is it going to be combined with NCDOT's highway safety plans, or is this really just looking at active alternative transportation, not actually the safety of the transportation?
Sure, that's a great question. So we will absolutely be looking at the roadways themselves, as well as multimodal. This is sort of trying to be as comprehensive as possible, but the primary driver will be protecting non-motorized travelers. And so that could include things like recommendations about traffic calming. We also want to look at state of good repair and maintenance. So making sure that roadways, but also crosswalks, things like that, that interact with the road, but might not necessarily be thought of as roads or car specific infrastructure, will be considered as part of the study. And I'm seeing a question in the chat from Jason again. What is the anticipated period of performance? We are still working on the timeline. So as far as the actual grant cycle itself, the application is due at the end of this month, and then RAISE will notify all recipients by some point in July of this year. And so then from there, we would start into contracting and things like that. And so we're still working out exactly what the schedule would look like, but we're estimating probably a 2 to 3 year process. Any other questions before we end the meeting tonight?
And you anticipate that most of the interventions will be engineering-based changes, or are there going to be sections for like education and, you know, those other pieces that might play a role? Or is it primarily just looking at the base structure of engineering design?
Oh, absolutely. Public education is definitely going to be a huge component, as well as programmatic recommendations. That we are certainly going to look at creating a wide-ranging toolkit of solutions. Engineering and infrastructure is certainly only one side of it, and public education is definitely going to be a huge aspect of this study as well.
Okay. Hearing no other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you everyone for attending. Really appreciate your time. Again, this meeting has been recorded, so we will be posting this on our website. And do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. But again, really seeking those letters if you're interested in that end of February timeline. So please let us know as you develop that or consider authoring a letter of support, which we greatly appreciate. If you're in the consideration process, do not hesitate to reach out. So
Can you
thank
give
you,
us?
everyone. I'm sorry, repeat.
So, I mean, I know that the letters will each be tailored to the individual agency. So mine would be healthcare, right? The impact of what we see if a pedestrian or bike is struck. But can you give us like a canned couple of paragraphs of who it would go to and or what the goals are so that we can just kind of insert our piece without having to figure out the wording is similar to what you presented, then we're not conflicting? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I will actually throw up on the screen for us real quick is this is that webpage of our site. If you click Public Engagement Toolkit, this is the packet that will help explain to you, again, pretty much this presentation in writing. But we have in the back of this packet, a structure for how to write the letter of support.
Okay.
So we provide you with the opening, kind of how the general introduction should be phrased. We have a statement that will help you write the background on the grant. And then certainly the commitment that your organization will be making. And that's graphically shown on the last page of the packet. This doesn't have to be verbatim, but to your point, if you need some help kind of understanding how to phrase certain elements of your letter, I think this is a really helpful guide for being able to do that. So great question. Okay. Thank you, folks. Have a great rest of your evening and appreciate your time. Again, thank you.
Thank you.